Take it on.
Hello, all, and welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Coolbaugh. I have with me a very special guest today, Luke Schulz. Luke, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. Yourself?
Oh, I'm excellent. I'm excellent. This is always my work time on a Friday night after my family goes to bed. So it feels good to
10
get another
p.m. Yep.
interview in. Yeah, talk a book, about some books or something like that. So yeah. I gotta say I've been, seeing your books, for a while. I bought A King's Radiance. I started the first three chapters, I think, like right before. I had messaged you on Twitter or X, whatever it's called now. That's what I was saying before we got done recording. I was like, I did not realize this Prince was out, so I must have screwed something up for
Yeah.
for Kindle or something like that. So after this, I'm gonna have to go and figure out what I did wrong.
I sort of did it
Um,
really quickly. Yeah.
yeah,
Sort of just like advertise and out.
yeah. I gotta say, absolutely loved both covers and blurbs. So I was enjoying the King's Radiance. I just got absolutely swamped with people sending me
Yeah.
arcs and review copies and stuff. They're like, "Can you help me
Oh,
out with the new
really?
year?" So I was like, "Yeah, sure." And then I realized I have like your book and four others where I was like, "Okay, I really got to get back to these." So I'm really excited to do that though.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited today to, dive more into both books and just like your writing journey in general. Which really leads us to
Mm.
that first one. What has your writing journey been like up until this point?
Yeah, well, it's sort of been interesting. So like you read a lot about different people's writing journeys. Like some people, I guess, are successful straight away. Others sort of gradually build and build up their audience and sort of until one day they, I guess, strike gold and others are still building and building and building until eventually they have enough books out and things like that. So I guess I'm still in that building stage, but honestly, it's gone a lot better than sort of what I initially expected. So I'm far from making a huge profit, but I guess what I am doing is learning. So I have my little audience now. I think that started with Instagram actually.
Oh, wow.
So I sort of, I was writing at the time. So I had this book sort of in the back of my mind, halfway done, and I decided to sort of start an Instagram to do some reviews and just to sort of find some friends that liked reading as much as I did, because I guess my friends aren't really into that. Um, so it started from there. I built an audience and it grew stronger and stronger. And I think I started to realize I've got a book coming here. And then I guess I sort of put it out there that I've got a book coming. I asked around who'd like to read it. I showed the cover, and then I got quite a big response. So more people than I thought. And then I sort of like built from there. I guess from there you go to Twitter, you build that platform, you get your newsletter. But more than that, it's just about sort of building relationships. So I guess with other authors, with other bloggers, and just people in the book community who like reading books.
Yep.
So you just find all the right connections, and then yeah, it's just about building sort of building, the journey so far.
I gotta
Oh no,
say
you just cut
it's
off.
interesting to me because I was
Oh
checking out.
no, you're still there.
Yeah, internet's been weird today. I was
No,
gonna say I
I've got
checked
you.
out.
It's working.
Got it. Okay. I'm saying it was so interesting because I was checking out a couple like reviewers that had actually reviewed A King's Radiance, and it was interesting because they were all pretty shocked that that was your first book. And one of them actually said that that was like his favorite book of the year. And said that I when I forget which one it was like fictions something like reviews, but he said like he didn't like fly through your book or do it himself. He felt like the book just like flowed through him, if that makes sense. So I thought that that was like a really good compliment coming from any book reviewer. So that was like super cool. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's awesome. It's not a King's Radiance wasn't yeah. Oh no, I've got you back. I think it just freezes for 2 seconds and then comes back. So
Oh,
I think I wrote an entire book before that, so it was about 140 or 130,000
oh wow.
pages, but that was sort of over 5 years.
Yeah.
So I sort of I got to the end of that and I thought, can I publish this? Probably not. It's probably not good enough. So in the end, I decided I'm going to use that book as sort of like my practice book. So that's sort of like my, I don't know, I
Yeah.
call it like my university degree where I learned all the tricks, and I learned how to write good prose, and that's where I got the knowledge to actually write a King's Radiance. So it wasn't actually my first try at
Yeah, yeah.
writing. I sort of, yeah. So I did know a little bit before going into my debut, which I think helped a lot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I always find it interesting because, like, I think I'm at what I don't know, like 6 or 7. If I had enough money for an editor, I'd probably be like 9 or 10 right now. Just like fully written and stuff with feedback. But I just find like some are definitely easier to finish now, and then some might be better to finish later. I felt like I had a couple where I wasn't quite at the right level yet, if that makes sense. So I think again, like you were saying, like you wrote 2 books, right? Like at least if you're really thinking, like the average of 75,000 words. So everybody, I feel like everybody I talk to on here does better by their third book, whether it was published or not. So I
Mhm.
like I call it like university training. I think that's totally what it is. So I think that's a really good way
Yeah,
to,
so
but
it's
yeah.
also edits as well, like how much you edit it. So if
Yeah,
I
yeah.
published my first draft, people wouldn't be saying that. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's awesome. That's really funny. Yeah, I could totally understand that. So, which kind of leads us into number 2 perfectly. What genre or genres do you currently write in and why?
Yeah, so I'd say I write epic fantasy. Maybe it goes into a little bit of dark fantasy or grim dark. I guess the lines get a bit blurred sometimes. And why I write in that genre, I guess it's because it's what I love to read. So I sort of love the big scope, and have a variety of characters and a big cast who are all sort of able to influence the fate of an entire world. But I guess I do want to at some stage maybe write a more personal story. So my first 2 books are sort of from three point of view characters. So I don't know, I haven't decided fully yet, but maybe my next trilogy or my next book, I won't just say call it a trilogy, might be from just a single point of view character, or maybe even I might do a progressive fantasy too. So
Oh, that'd be cool.
something to change. I just like continuously, I
Right.
guess, trying to test my limits, and I guess learn more about the craft as well while I do that. So yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just constantly trying to sort of look for new things to do.
Yep. No, I get that. I find it hard to
Yeah,
like somebody who's I'm just not one of those people, like I'll just tell people right off the bat and I have it. I'm like, I'm not one of those people that's gonna be like 50, books in one series. It's like I don't know if I can do a Jim Butcher thing. Same thing. I have like
yeah, I
a
don't think neither. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I like variety. I like to read different things. I like to write different things. And I always tell people I'm like if it works for people, it does. If not, I'm like I kind of just at this point I'm just doing it for myself. So if anybody wants to join me on the journey, that's not a problem. But I think yeah, I
yeah,
think it goes back to what you're saying, it's what you like to read. So I always tell people that it's like just write what you like to read. I've seen a couple people try to write to market this or that. Doesn't work for me. I'm like you, I just
yeah,
write what I like to read. So that involves different genres, sometimes melding them together, Star
yeah,
Wars style, as I always call it, with the sci-fi and fantasy, that kind of thing, or adventure fantasy, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I think it makes total sense.
yeah. That's a big question. Like a lot of people, I guess, write for a certain market, and in a way, there is a market for what I do. But I don't think I'll be stuck writing just because people like that. I'm more of a, I'll write what I feel like. Otherwise, it won't feel natural to me. Yeah,
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I feel like you're like end up being kind of like a phony and then people see through it. Like, you said, you work with kids too. It's like kids can totally, whatever age, like, call your BS, and if you're real with them, right? Like they're, real with you. And I feel it's like readers too. Like readers can totally tell if you're just going through the motions, I feel like some people are really good at that, but yeah, I don't think I'd be good at that. I just want to write something that I care about or characters or a story or a theme or something like that. I feel like that gets me a stronger story than just doing something random. I do know a couple others
yeah,
I've talked to where they're like they can do that every month and bust out an indie book, and that's totally fine. That's
yeah,
just personally I find that's not my style. So yeah.
yeah. For
And we're
sure.
gonna go with that third one because this is my favorite one to ask people. So what are your bonds of kin books about, and how did you come up with these ideas?
Okay, I've got a bit of a long response to this one, I
It's okay.
think.
I know it's an iceberg. Feel free.
So I'm just yeah, I'll read off my notes a little bit. So King's Radiance, I guess it's all about the relationship between family and in particular siblings. Now, I do have two younger siblings myself, so I'm the oldest child. I've got a younger brother and his sister. Take what from that what you will. I didn't actually write it with the intention, but maybe subconsciously as just sort of happens. I don't know. Just don't tell my brother and sister that. But no, it's all about sort of it's all about sort of them they sort of become separated at the start, and it's about them sort of coming together throughout the book to take down this corrupted monarch. So there's brutal magic where people sort of harness sunlight, and they can sort of manipulate it into weapons or to use it for like devastating effect. I've got like an animal companion, this little like creature I call a cricket, sort of like he turns into. Oh, I won't spoil it, but there's dragons. And as to how I came up with the idea, this it's really tough one with the magic system. I would say it heavily resembles sort of. I don't know if you watched Dragon Ball Z growing up.
Oh yeah, oh for sure.
I just always love watching those fighting scenes and like the energy
Yeah,
blast, Kamehameha, things like that. So I think my magic is just like my own version. I call it shine. So it's like sunlight that people can soak in and use for these blasts. So mine is sort of like my own version of the Dragon Ball Z energy.
that's cool.
I just changed it to sort of make it my own. Um, but in terms of plot, um, the chapter, so I think you've read it before you said, is actually influenced by a certain scene in One Piece. I don't know if you've watched that anime.
Oh,
You could
that's
probably tell
cool.
by now.
I can
You could
see
probably
that
tell by
now.
now
Yeah,
that I love
cool.
anime. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So the scene depicts a princess named Shirahoshi. So she's actually a mermaid. This is quite deep into the One Piece saga. So in that scene, he's sort of like he can do whatever he wants, and he thinks he can just get away with it. So in the scene, the father of the princess. Sorry, I'm rambling, but I'll get to the point. The father of the princess is sort of standing behind her, watching her getting taken prisoner, and she like he can't do anything because he knows that if he does do something, that this person, this god or this god creature, or whatever, is going to pretty much burn his whole kingdom to the ground. So
Oh
he's
wow.
standing there, unable to do anything, watching his daughter be taken prisoner, and he can't do anything about it. And that scene really hit me in all the right emotions. So I tried to sort of dissect it and figure out why it was so good. And I tried to replicate it in my prologue. So if you've read that, it's pretty similar. Obviously, I changed a bit,
Yeah, yeah,
and my
yeah.
story branches completely into a different direction after there. But that was my initial sort of influence, and that's what I try. Or if I watch something like an anime or a TV show and it has a really good story and it makes me feel those emotions, you'll see me jotting down like little notes, trying to figure out what about those scenes made me feel those emotions, and that's where I try and replicate though like that feeling in my own writing. So that's a lot of where my influence comes from.
Oh, that's cool. I always do like what I call character studies. Like I loved Chuck Norris's like T Walker Texas Ranger, and as a kid, I was like, oh, he's just like a Texas Ranger, a cop, right? Like a sheriff who knows martial arts and do these things. But as an adult, I was rewatching with my son on paternity leave, and oh my gosh, he's such a complex character. Like he's an ex-Vietnam veteran. He learned his martial arts from like a Japanese basically like mobster who was in like the army with him. And then yeah, it was just like crazy. Like he's like half and Chuck Norris in real life's like Cherokee, I think it is. And it's just crazy. But like in the show, he's got all these different things going, and he was like an orphan. He's raised by his uncle who's Native American. He lives with him the first like 4 seasons, but like it was just so crazy. And then at one part, they're like, "Oh, he's got a lot of PTSD, and his like fiance died, like all these crazy things." And I just didn't realize as a kid like how complex the character was. He just looked cool and did flashy kicks. So I like was watching it for a long time to pull a lot of things just for different characters and stuff. Anything by Idris Elba, I feel like I do the same thing for. But I love him as an actor. But there's a lot of I feel like I do, I just study characters like crazy. So I totally understand that. Can you hear me now?
Frozen again.
Oh, perfect. Zoom is not the best today.
Sorry, I just missed that.
That's
I
okay.
just missed that. You froze.
Okay. I was gonna say Zoom is not the best today. But I
That's all
definitely
right.
think you're right about cool stuff, right? Or cool characters. I just feel like I do that all the time. And I think like again, you're taking in what kind of media, you really enjoy. I like Farhad from um Farhad and the Great Mauser, just those books. Um and I kind of wrote a similar Barbarian because I like that. Paul S. Kemp does the Hammer and the Blade trilogy series hopefully one day. And I love those two characters that are brothers that will do anything for each other, get into crazy mischief
Mm,
and whatever. And I like to write those types of stories too. Sword and Sorcery is really fun
yeah.
for me, so I totally agree. And One Piece is really fun. So a lot of people have been
Yeah.
talking about Attack on Titan, so has been a big one for them. So which is
Yeah. I watched about half of that, I think.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. My best friend sent me that.
Stay
They watched the first
tuned
two
for my
seasons.
next. Stay tuned for my next monster invading world. No.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I will definitely stay
I
tuned for
wish.
that.
I wish.
Like really cool. I
Uh,
didn't even realize because I only got to I think like the first two episodes of One Piece, season one, like with the live action, and then I think it's been a while since I actually watched like the original, like the first season. I feel like a lot of stuff I just got really behind on with like
yeah.
two masters
Like
program.
once you're in, you're in.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. That's awesome. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think the inspiration that we were talking about is like a huge deal. So that all sounds really awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, my friend actually asked me the other day. He's like, "What's like a book that you're trying to get back to?" So I said, "A King's Radiance," and I mentioned two others from some authors that I've been talking to recently. He's like, "Okay, so I'm gonna write that down." I was like, "I think that he'll really enjoy it," so I can't wait for him to come back. I'm hoping that we can chat about a couple of books that he's read recently off of recommendations. So that'd be cool if he finished
Oh,
yours at the same time as I did, and we could
yeah.
have a little chat. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, for
If I
sure.
can get him to do it around like
I'll have some
relatively
more. I'll
soon.
have some more for him later this year.
That's
I'll talk about
awesome.
that at the end though.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. So speaking of like world building and your magic system, things like that. So when it comes to building your world, how do you go about making it feel unique or real?
Um, yeah, it's an interesting question. I think it's that word, unique. So you have to try something different because,
Yeah,
like, if we're being serious, pretty much everything's been done before, hasn't it? So
yes.
you got to sort of, if you're using something that's been done before, you got to sort of give it a twist, sort of make it a little bit different. So obviously, I spoke before about magic systems, or you got to make it a little bit different. So I've made people able to manipulate it. I've also given like a big, like massive cost to it. There's a price. So if you use too much of it, sort of your arm gets really like burnt and you can't
Mm,
use it anymore. And then other things like, for example, you got like a landmark in your world. So I have a huge tower in my world. And like that's been done before, Lord of the Rings, Dark Tower.
yeah.
Um, my tower, it's basically it links up with the magic system, so it's basically able to store and shoot out sunlight. So it's basically
That's
like
cool.
one big nuke
That's
like, which can just destroy cities and things like that, and it does in the story if you get far enough into it. And then other things like dragons. So my them, or magic of the world. So I always try and combine two things into one to change it. So I combine the dragons and the magic. So the people that can use magic can sort of leave this sunlight from their fingertips,
That's cool.
and then these creatures will guzzle it up, and that's how they grow stronger and grow
Mm.
bigger. So my main character Rays has one of these prickets, which his sister gives him in the first chapter, and then throughout the novel, you'll see it get bigger and bigger and bigger after eating
Cool.
this sunlight. So that's my different take on dragons and sort of how I differentiate. Just having, okay, let's just have a dragon in the story. I'll try and change up the trope a little bit and make
Yeah.
my own sort of version of them. I don't know. That's just my way of changing things up. I like to smash two things together, see what result you get.
Yeah. No, I think that's really cool. That's my kind of reading right there and my kind of writing. Like in my dark fantasy series and just regular fantasy, like I have like elves, right? But not typical. I have them where they're everybody. I always wonder like why are they vegetarians and Vulcan and stuff? And why are they so close to nature? And I was like, oh, I'm just gonna make their skin like with chloroplast and they're half like plant, half like elf, if you will. And then now they don't need to sleep necessarily, so that makes more sense to me. And why are they so close to nature? Well, they're like 50% nature. So I totally get you. There's somebody a while back that did that with like ogres or something, or orcs, and it was like just so interesting. So, oh, instead of making them
Mm,
dumb, they made them like really intelligent and just gave them a really unique culture involving druidry. Oh, it was the Eberron world. It was a couple of different authors, but they just did such a good job of creating this. I would say like Morrowind and Oblivion too did a great job of kind of separating those, changing dwarves, stuff like that. So I think that's a really good idea. It's really cool.
yeah.
So I like to
But I
read.
always find it, yeah, I find it so interesting that nowadays it's like, yes, there was a call for being different, changing, but now
Yep.
it's sort of going back. Now it's like, okay, we've had the different. Now let's go
Yep.
back. I want the classic stuff. So you'll see more like you can probably name a few authors recently who are going back to the classics and
Yep.
giving people what they used to want, and it's working. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't
That's
know.
actually what
Maybe
I'm
it
doing for
works to
my
stay
yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
stay the same.
No, totally. Yeah, everything comes back around. I'm doing that for my Kindle Vella series. It's just I don't want to have
Mm,
to do a bunch of world building. I just want you to focus on my two characters and the cool adventures that they get
yeah,
into. I always tell people like, what's it like? I'm like, it's like a fantasy version of Lethal Weapon, with like the same type of duo, and then in a fantasy world with Mission Impossible stakes, and adventures, and I'm like, I don't want to do the whole world building thing. I'll add some stuff here and there, but I'm not going to change. I want you to know exactly what an orc or elf or whatever is and kind of go from there. So that's my way of kind of
yeah,
hitting
and
both
that works
markets.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, it is
In the
funny that
end,
you
the
mentioned that.
story.
Yeah.
In the end, this is just my opinion, but I would rate characters and character depth over world building. I'm not saying world building is not important, but I would say the strength of the characters
Yeah.
is raised
Yep.
above that in my, in my at least in my opinion. So I've just
No,
lost
no,
you.
I think that
It's
makes
just
total
frozen.
sense.
I'll get you back in a sec. Okay, go yeah.
I was gonna say, I think that makes total sense. What you're saying, is like, yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I love world building. Don't get me wrong. Love writing it, reading it. But at the end of the day, I've read some of the most mundane world building in my life, but they've had the greatest characters, and it's just a really cool
Mhm.
story. And I've read some other ones where they, hit both points really well. But I agree with you. I'd
Yeah,
rather have an interesting character or characters than, a super interesting setting because I think you can have a super interesting setting and cool stuff, but people aren't going to care if the characters aren't cool. So I think that
yeah,
makes
exactly.
sense.
And that's not me dissing world building at all. It's still very important,
Oh,
but that's
oh, yeah.
just me like ranking, yeah, character depth, just that little bit above. Yeah.
Yep. No, I totally agree. Yeah, because I don't know. I was just somebody was mentioning that on their podcast recently, and I'm like, it makes total sense. Is that you need, and Michael R. Fletcher and I talked about that too, like a couple of podcasts ago, where it's like same thing, where yeah, it's I think we think it's more important to build characters, over with substance, than just throwing some cool stuff in every
Just
once in
make
a
them
while. I
suffer.
think
Yeah.
Star Wars, yeah, I think Star Wars, there's so many interesting characters. Like everything else is cool, don't get me wrong, but I think they just did such a good job with the characters. The books in particular, I really enjoyed because the characters and the relationships are really cool. And they, do interesting things together, adventure stuff
I
like
do want
that.
to get into reading Star Wars at some point. Yeah.
Oh man, I let me know because I have so many good recommendations from like the stuff.
Yeah,
He
it's
does the
hard to
long
find
series is amazing.
an entry point, isn't it? Yeah.
Yep. 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 Now it is. Yeah. Especially when they change things. But
Yeah.
yeah, like I'd say the old school, like going in, Timothy Zahn, anything he wrote was amazing. Kevin J. Anderson was like out of this world. Yeah, there were like some really good ones that were stationed just a few years after like Return of the
Mm.
Jedi. Shadows of the Empire is actually in between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And it's one of my all-time favorite books. That and Splinter of the Mind's Eye, which was actually supposed to be like the start of Empire Strikes Back. And like then he changed things. But both of those books, those like
Mm.
two of the Star Wars books I've read like 5 or 6 times. They're not very long, but they're some of the best. But again, they
Yeah.
had like Shadows of the Empire has one of the coolest villains besides Darth Vader I've ever seen, or Darth Maul. I would say he's like top three. Yeah, so it's really
I
cool.
love
But
their
how
covers. Yeah, I always see their covers. They're so good.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah.
It's like my cover because I've got like kind of like a lightsaber sort of
That's
thing going
true. Yeah, that's probably why.
on
As
with
soon as I
race.
saw it, yeah, yeah. As soon as I saw King's Radiance,
Yeah.
and the Sun Prince, I was like, oh man. And my buddy goes, "Are you even gonna read the blurb?" I was like, "Nope." I was like, "Because this guy knows what I like," and I was like, "Doesn't matter." And
Yeah.
then I bought it, King's Radiance, and then read the blurb, and I was like, "Yeah, I was right." And actually, I was just talking to Andy Peliquin about this, for the masterclass last weekend for TV ArtCon, and he said the same thing. He's like, and we were talking about Instagram before. He goes, "Usually I just look at the cover." He goes, "I read the blurb every once in a while, and I'm like, yeah, I get it, because I feel like once you
Yeah.
understand your flavor, you just understand it." So yeah, so it was really cool.
But yeah. And he's been great. He read mine and I think we entered a giveaway together and it's just like been so helpful for my newsletter and things like that. So yeah.
Oh, that's super
Yeah.
awesome. I'll have to check that out. Was that the one that you guys just shared like recently?
No, he that's another one he did with some other friends of mine. Mine was before that, yeah.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
same thing, but a different one. Yeah.
Okay. I was gonna say because I like entered one of them for you, so I don't remember if Andy was in it or not. So
Yeah, he's got another one. I think it's still going now, actually. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep. Yep. That's super cool. That's good to know. Um, so curious, like in terms of we talked a little bit about your magic system. So I don't want to like kind of be redundant on that, but like in terms of
I
like
can go to
like
my other
Brandon
one.
Sanderson. What did you say?
I said I can say the one from my other book.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That'd be cool, actually. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's so the other. Do you want me to go the other book,
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
magic
yeah. I
system?
didn't even think of that. That's a good idea.
It's yeah. I'll talk more about the actual book maybe later because
Yeah, yeah,
it's so hard to it's so hard to explain. I find myself really struggling to explain this, but I'll explain the basic concept just really briefly,
yeah, yeah,
because it's quite cool. I don't know how I come up with it. It's just yeah. So it's basically a world where so this is my new book, Soul Cage. It's basically a world where magic is attained through the act of murder.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
every human has a single soul, and that soul contains a little bit of magic. But to harness that magic, you need more souls. So basically, if you kill someone, you steal their soul and then attain their magic. If you kill someone who's already killed 4 people, you get all of those souls together. So you get 5. And then the magic sort of builds up over decades and decades and centuries. So eventually it gets to a point where when my novel starts, this one person has like 100,000 souls within his body. So he has like pretty much uncountable magic to call from.
That's cool.
Um, so that's how sort of the process works. Yeah. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
explaining it any further gets really confusing.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's super cool. It's kind of like Warbreaker, but very different. Like Warbreaker with Brandon
I've
Sanderson, I
I've
thought
heard
was
someone say that. Yeah, I haven't actually read Warbreaker, so I'm
yeah,
hoping
but
I haven't copied it, but
no, no, no,
I
no.
have
No,
heard
I was just
someone
gonna
say that.
say, no, like the general idea is there, but theirs is like everybody has like a certain number of breaths based on like all these parameters. I want to give it away for people, but Warbreaker was one of my favorite I think it was my favorite Brandon Sanderson book so far, and it's usually people's like least favorite, but I loved it. But it
Hmm.
was similar to what you're saying, but you don't have to kill them. You could, or they could just give you like their breath or their soul, like willingly, but then it like drains them. But it's cool because like the universe for him comes more into focus the more breaths you have. And yeah, there's a huge part that's super cool. You should read it at some point to listen to it. It's like really cool.
I think I might actually, because yeah, there's another beta reader I think said the same thing. That it's like a rule
Yeah.
breaker, but I haven't actually read it.
Well, that's so funny because Dirk Ashton had like the same. He was on their podcast, Wizards, Words, and Words. And he said he had like the same vocabulary for a Paternus as um it's like Neil Gaiman for American Gods. And his friend goes, "Did you read it?" And he's like, "No, I've never even." He goes, "I've heard of it, I've never read it." So he goes, "You
Yeah,
need to read it." So he goes in and like he had like three or four of the same like hours or whatever. And he was like, I
all
need to
right.
change these words. So his was
Yeah.
like way too similar, he said. But yeah, yours is like a similar idea, but like I feel like the killing
I
totally
don't think
different.
anyone else can think of the things that I've thought of in this book. So if it is the same, that I'll be shocked. But yeah.
No, 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 no. It's just like a cool idea that you can, like
I'd
take
say
someone's
my
soul.
more of my influences come from probably Brent Week's Lightbringer. I'd say
Ooh, that's a good
a
one.
lot of the influences come from that. So I've got people like breaking. So if you get too many of those, the souls they sort of um try and influence you and try and take over your body. So then
That's cool.
if that happens, then you sort of break and they can either take control or like hundreds of them can take control and anything can happen.
Oh,
So
that's crazy.
it's all about the cost of magic, which is what I was
Yeah.
talking about before. You've got to have that like consequence. If you're going to
Yep.
seek power, there's always a consequence. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I
I
find
totally
important.
agree. Well, it's like I got this book, this like trilogy or like it's gonna be a series eventually. I hope enough people like it or I can get it, but it's like ogres and overlords, and I got these like ogres who came from somewhere else. I don't want to spoil it, but they came from somewhere else and like another dimension or realm or whatever, and they're just like the underlings of they're like the Emperor's Royal Guard or whatever you want to say. They're like the elite soldiers, but they tried to invade like thousands and thousands of years ago, and um, they end up, everybody else has to retreat, and then they get stuck here. There's like a certain group that gets stuck here. And at first they fight humans, but eventually they're just outnumbered, outgunned, and they end up they have the ability to like morph their bodies. So they end up
Hmm.
taking like the form of humans. And the people that hunt them down end up finding a way to track their magic. So they're still like superhuman in like human form, but if they change forms where they're stronger and all these things, faster things like that, then the rest of the humans can track them. And this secret like monster hunter clan can track them. So I have one part in book one where it's like the guy, like the main dude, doesn't have a choice. Like the main ogre, he just has to do this thing, and then he's screwed because he knows these monster hunter clan are like coming after him. So that's like my cost, like in terms of the thing that they
Oh,
can
that's
do
cool.
that helps them most. So usually I try to be human. But yeah, like it's this either they could just be an ogre, but it's the switching back and forth that to get them hunted by like thousands of people essentially. And it's like a
I've got
GPS
actually got a
tracking
similar
beacon.
concept in one of mine. Yeah, in the
Yeah,
third
yeah.
book of Bonds of Kin or the prequel novella as well.
Oh,
The
cool.
Skay come into it, and it's not exactly the same as yours, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a similar sort of thing, and that's yeah, I really like that idea. Yeah,
Well, it goes back to what you were saying earlier. It's like everything's been done, and at this point, like I've seen some
it's how you
people where I'm
yeah
like, because I've read a lot, so I'm like, oh, you're like kind of like this or that, like between books and comics or movies. And then some people will be like, oh, I didn't even realize I read that or watched that movie years ago or, read that comic or whatever. And I think a lot of it just becomes, subliminal. But yeah, I think the coolest thing is to kind of, like glass, like tear everything apart and then, put the pieces together like a puzzle. I think that's
yeah.
where you get really unique ideas. So,
You just got to do it well. Yeah,
yep,
if
yeah,
you got a similar
that's
idea, you just got to execute it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, totally. And I felt like there was a lot of people after Harry Potter came out that had actually put out similar ideas, but they're like, oh, you were copied or, or whatever. And it's like, well, you tried to go traditionally published and it was. And it's like, somebody could have the idea before some of those ideas, before
Can't use ones
J.K.
anymore.
Rowling. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And now with India, I feel like you could just look up whatever, like, and do things. But I feel like I do a lot of art. Like I love art. So I'll see something and I used to write characters after an art piece or whatever, where I would combine different sections, kind of like Frankenstein it together, and then be like, yeah, this is my person, so to speak. But yeah, I think it's really hard to come up with like an original idea. I actually have a very similar experience with my friend, who he ended up like he loves like Mark Timony, he loves Forgotten Realms, Dragonland, stuff like that. And him and I have like almost like twin book tastes, right? And even the obscure stuff. So once I started
Who's
reading
that?
his first book, The Blood of the Spear, we
Oh,
had like
yeah, I've read that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So like the void came up, that's my dark god, and the dark like energy of my universe. And then I think he even said the source because that's like my goddess or the light side, and like that's like of the universe. And he used that at some point too. We had like four major like terms that we used in different ways or some similar.
Yeah.
So it's just so
Yeah,
funny to
Mark's
me
Mark's
that
helped me a lot with my
oh
publishing. I
cool.
think he did it before mine,
Oh
and
good.
now yeah, I asked him a lot of questions when I was in the process of doing my own, and he was
Yeah,
great.
yeah. Him and I actually had like 4 or 5 interviews, and then like early on when I was doing this podcast, and then um yeah, like him and I met a couple times too, where he was just helping me with stuff. I sent him like a couple prologues and different things just to be like, hey, what do you think, sort of thing. Yeah, he's awesome. So if
Mm.
nobody's read The Blood of the Spear, that's another one that you and him are both on my list. So I was trying to knock everybody out that's a little bit novellas and stuff
Yeah.
like that, and then go for the bigger stuff once I have some more time in my hands after I publish a few things
It's
here
the
this
same
thing.
with
But
everyone. Don't worry, mate. I'm the
I'm
same. I've
like,
got so many books I want to get to, so many
yeah,
authors I want to try out, but it's just time thing, especially when you're writing yourself. And then
yep,
obviously I don't, but you have kids, and
yep,
I like you got full-time jobs, and yeah, it gets a lot.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You
yep,
just got
yeah. It
sort of
just
got to
gets
get through
crazy.
what you can.
Yeah, people keep
I think I
sending me
just started
things.
reading the Berserk,
Oh
big
yeah,
deluxe ones, so the big chunky ones.
oh
That's what
that's
I'm going through at
awesome.
the moment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have that on my list, but I just keep forgetting to actually they got it at the local library. I actually should when I take back I got one of the John Scalzi. Um it's actually really cool. I'll have to send it to you. I think you'd like it. It's like in the future, but it's like an urban fantasy and it's like impossible to kill people and because of all the technology, but then there are these specialized detectives who can track you down if you've murdered somebody, and it's like a really cool like urban fantasy noir. But my friend was saying I just like randomly sent it to him. He was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so good." He's like the magic system or whatever I was saying, the urban fantasy. He's like it's right up your alley, and he said that it's like it is really unique with how he put together certain things. I love his writing, so
Hmm.
yeah. So I've been doing a lot more novellas lately, just so I could kind of keep writing as
Yeah.
read as I'm writing. I feel like it's hard sometimes, but get
Yeah.
too into the system, I guess. But all right. So this is
Yeah,
my
for sure.
favorite question to ask people besides number three. So who is the character you have written with whom you would most want to spend a day with, or maybe go on an adventure with? Pick your favorite child.
Um, oh, I reckon I have two
That's fine. Go
from a
ahead.
King's Radiance, probably Draz. I don't know if you've met him, but he's sort of like a Mandalorian type thing. He always wears a metal helmet, and he's sort of like this. Yeah, he always cracking jokes, and he's just a funny guy. And my second one would be Mydron from my new book. So he's the character I spoke about before. He sort of accidentally becomes the most powerful mage in the world because he accidentally kills the most powerful person in the world.
That's
So
awesome.
he's a former educator of children, and then he turns into this like really powerful person. And then I think I told you before how the souls sort of infiltrate your mind
Yeah, yeah,
and try and take over you. To combat this, he he gets drunk on wine and he smokes moss, which is pretty much like my world's version of weed. So he's just walking around being like a witty, just spitting off witty comments, and he's drunk off his ass the whole time, and he's the most powerful person in the world. I don't know. I just reckon spending a day with him would be pretty fun. Yeah.
yeah. You definitely have a story to tell, right? You could write like maybe a couple more books just
Yeah.
from that day.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
I hope people like him. I don't know. We'll
That sounds
see.
awesome, actually. That's like kind of similar to, oh my God, it's like it had to have been one of the first like science fiction books I ever read, but it was like on a different planet, and they really mixed a lot of fantasy and sci-fi, but there was like a god that was like that, and I have to figure out what book it was, but like I like instantly fell in love with that type of character because it was just like so fun with the, the crap that they got into and then having to get out of it and stuff like that. So I feel like that's like super
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. And it's not really like
Yeah.
something that you see a lot, I feel like, in terms of like that's definitely like a unique trope, I would say. There's only a couple I can
Yeah.
think of, like, in terms of really fantasy or sci-fi.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
was
really
trying
cool.
to be
I
a
can
bit
think of a
different.
couple more, but yeah, no, that's super cool. I'm sorry to make you
Mm.
pick two of your favorite children. I only have one child, so it's easy for me to pick my favorite kid. But yeah.
Books
My
are
students
children,
all tell me like,
aren't
who's your favorite?
they? Books are children.
Oh man. I, I'm glad I only have one kid, but books, it's like you can see behind me, it's like that's only like I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
half my collection. I got like another shelf over here. I got a bunch of shelves underneath my desk. I'm actually glad you guys can't see this side of the room. Um, Kids always ask me. I found out if you have in the United States, if you have like over 3,000 books, you're considered a library. So I said to my wife, I'm trying to get that
I
plaque,
don't think I have that
and
many, but I am due for a new shelf.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've
That's
got the
fair.
spinning one, so it spins around.
That's cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, that's a really good idea. My wife's not gonna like you now because now I need to get one of those shelves. It's gonna have to go over here or something like
They
that.
fit in the corner of a room, perfect. They fit like 190 to 100 books, and they fit in the
Yeah, yeah.
corner of a room, and they spin around.
That's so cool. I'm gonna have to do that now. I could actually move my desk over a little bit and probably fit it right over here. So that's
She'll probably
awesome.
like it because it'll take up less space. But
Yeah, she probably would. She'd probably be like, let's take these. I actually got her. She likes these. This is like two. So she actually really likes those
yeah,
now. She's like, oh, it just looks too good to take down. I'm like, I did it
Mm.
finally. So
You just need
I'll
one of
have
those
to try.
sliding ladders.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh man, we've been looking for a different house, so I've been wanting one of those. So the other day, she sends me one with the sliding ladder. She goes, "You could literally be Belle from Beauty and the Beast and just go back and forth on this thing." It was so cool, but it was unfortunately a little too far from my kid's daycare. But yeah, I told her I was like, "That's like
Yeah,
my dream is to be like Belle from Beauty and the Beast and just
yeah,
sing songs
yeah.
and go
I
back and forth
think
and
that's
fix your stuff."
every book lover's dream. You get a bookcase with a sliding ladder.
Yeah, exactly. So I always am interested with people with this question. I kind of go back and forth with it. I give it to some people, sometimes I don't. But what is the hardest thing you've had to do or overcome in your writing journey so far? And there's not just one. If you have a couple on
Okay.
the mind, feel free to share those.
No, so I've got one that happened recently.
Mm,
I'll try and put it as best I can. So I think one of the hardest things, at least for me, is sort of setting aside your ego a little bit
mm.
sometimes. So I know for me, I tend to get like overly excited about my projects. Like after I've finished something, I'll sit down and go, "Well, this is the best thing ever." And then you have those days where you go the opposite and you go, "Oh, this is crap." But I think recently, what's happened with me is I finished Soul Cage, and this I finished it about 6 months ago, maybe.
Oh, wow.
And then I sort of sat down like, this is the best thing ever. This is going to be huge. And then I sent it to some beta readers, and I sent it to my editor, who's actually also my beta reader. He's really, really good. His name is also Luke. Um, and so I sent it to him and expecting maybe, okay, I'll do a couple of changes here and there, whatever, then I'll get into the edit. And he sent me like a 50-page document,
Oh, dang.
just destroying it, destroying the whole thing. And it was really good, worth the money, 100%, because I think at the start when I first got um that email and I started reading it, I sort of had that reaction everyone would have, which was like, nah, screw this, like, well, I'm better than that. Let's just publish it. It's good enough, blah blah blah. And then after a couple of minutes, or maybe the next day or something, I sat down and I actually read through his notes and I read through my story, and I was like, shit, he's right. He's right here. He's right there. He's right here. Oh, shit. Like everything that he said was like spot on. So I think the hardest decision that I made was the decision to rewrite the whole book.
Mm.
So I started this. I'm just up to the ending right now, but I started this a few months ago. So I rewrote the whole thing. And I think
Okay.
what my problem with the book was, it had all the right ideas and there's lots of good things in it, but I sort of just I sort of just touched base with some of the ideas that I wanted to portray. So things like for example, I've got like an autistic character. I sort of only went surface level with
Mm.
that autism. And same thing, I've also got who I told you before, Margarine, he's an alcoholic. So I wanted to delve into that that sort of alcoholism. But again, I only went surface level. So I sort of said it was there, but I didn't really show it being there, if that makes sense. So
Totally.
with
Yep.
this rewrite, what I've tried to do with the other kids' autism, I've researched, I've like now I've watched all of Atypical, I think, and I've taken notes and I thought, okay, how can I show this through the character? Same thing with the alcohol. How like instead of just having it there, just having it part of his character, I need to actually show this, show how it affects him and show how he overcomes it. So that's been the hardest part so far. And it's hard right now because I've rewritten it and I don't know everyone's reaction. I don't know if I've done it good enough, but I'm hoping that I have. So that'll be something that I find out in the next few months, whether
Yeah.
what I've changed actually works or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that makes total sense. For my second novella, for my Nathaniel Wither like prequel series, I'm like, I'm gonna do three novellas, and I get to the second one, and he's got PTSD, and I talk about different flavors of things. Like I've had PTSD, but like totally different than what's happened to him. So I think that's where I've gotten stuck recently, writing like two different times, like certain scenes, and I'm just like, I don't know. I feel like I'm doing the same thing though, just like just writing on the surface, you know. So the second time I did a much better job, showing rather than telling. I don't even think the character, at this point, as far as I've gotten, like knows that he has PTSD. But I think like you, the reader, would be like,
Mm.
oh, this is like what's going on. He has one scene at the start of the novella where something happens with some locals and he gets really angry and instigates, which usually isn't his like thing. And then he basically beats the crap out of him, and then is just like shocked, disgraced, and dismayed that, he like has done this, like hurt people for no reason. Like he's supposed to like help people. He's an ex-recon Marine. And that's like why he wanted to do that. So I totally get it.
Mm.
When my friend read part of it, he's like, dude, you're just here. He's like, you gotta like make me feel it, and then people
Yeah,
will
you
be able
got to
to
go,
connect with it.
got to go
So I think
deep.
that
Yeah,
makes total
and it's
sense.
hard. It's hard to do. You don't even
Yes.
realize you're not doing it sometimes.
Yeah, yep, yep, yep. But again, I think, you brought up beta readers, and editors. I think that's why, like you said, like totally worth the money, And I think if you're particularly going to be indie, I definitely think you have to think about that. And
You need
like
someone you
how
trust. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I had an editor actually approach me that I helped actually last couple of years with like he sent me clients for interviews. So you can interview them. I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? So he helped me out quite a bit, and I'm actually submitting him on Tuesday. So I'm like glad that I have somebody though, because I was reading it yesterday. Started the like third time editing, and I was like, how did this crap get by me? Like so. Yeah, I
Yep.
definitely think it's really important.
Yeah.
Oh, actually,
Yeah.
he brought
It
up a really good
happens.
point with ego, and this has been going on with a lot of people the last couple weeks, uh, in like the community. So I was just curious, like, do you read your reviews at all?
Yeah, I don't get like an overly amount that I can afford to not
Yeah.
to like to just let them slip. Yeah, I read them. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. How do you feel after reading them? I'm just curious.
Well, I think I've been pretty lucky lucky so far, to be honest. Like I think most of the ones that are critical, I can say, like I can disagree with it, but I can see how that they would think that. So I'm just like, yeah, fair enough. You've said it. You said your opinion. I respect that and move on. But I don't think I've had enough terrible ones to really understand how that feels just yet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So, but I
yeah.
think that comes when you get bigger. So,
Yeah. That's fair. I just was curious
but the
because I
good the good ones, yeah, they always give you a bit of a lift, like a bit of like you might be having a shitty day and you'll read a good one. You'll be like, okay, someone else likes this. I've now got 100 people that have like this enough to give it 5 stars. Like, okay, it must be
yeah
doing something right.
yeah. No, that's totally true. I think that's funny. I just saw
Oh
some
yeah, I wish I got to the stage where I didn't read read them all, but yeah, and
one of
hopefully
these
I will
days.
one day. But yeah.
Yeah. That's funny. All right. Well, we're wrapping up on time here. This was awesome. But I just want to make sure you had time to talk about, any news updates or current projects that you're working on that you can share with us.
Yeah. So I got two coming within. I'm hoping the next sort of five months. So the first one's Soul Cage, which is what I've talked about a little bit in this channel already. So I'll just do another quick summary of what the magic is. So for those who are just watching now, so it's a world where magic is attained through murder. So every human is born with a single soul, and each soul has a little bit of magic. But to really harness this magic, they need more souls. So basically, if you kill someone, you steal their soul and attain their magic. If you kill someone who's already killed 4 or 5 people, you get all of their souls and you get more magic. So this accumulates and accumulates over hundreds of years until eventually you get to the present, and that's where people with 100 like tens of thousands of souls, so heaps of magic. So there's just these huge magical battles that go on. So that's called Soul Cage. That'll be out. I'm hoping for a May release.
Oh,
That
cool.
way I can sort of enter the
Oh,
S
yep.
self-published fantasy blog off SPFBO. Yeah,
I always mix them up.
I'll aim for that, but I want to make sure I get it right before that. And my second one will be a prequel novella in the Bonds of Kin series. This is already written. I just need to edit it.
Oh,
It's
cool.
called Eagles Fall. It'll be set about, I think, about 1,000 years before
Cool.
the events of a King's Radiance, and it'll be all about sort of the downfall of a faction. So this faction that were once heroes, and that when your King's Radiance comes along, you can see that they're the villains, but
Yeah.
they were once heroes. So it's the Eagles Fall, the prequel novella sort of describes, or not describes, sort of shows the events where they turn from the heroes of the world to the villains of the world. So it has these big battles between giant dragons and giant eagles. If you if you're into that, and it sort of has like a little bit of a Romeo Juliet romance. If there was dragons and eagles in Romeo and Juliet.
Awesome. Well, that
Yeah,
sounds amazing.
and
So
then
much.
yeah, from there I'll be working on the third book in the Bonds of Kin, but I'll get these two out first, and then that'll be my focus. Yeah.
Well, that sounds awesome. Well, Luke, I really appreciate your time. It was great talking to you. If you need anything, in the future, just
Yeah.
let me know. Just want to remind our audience, please, to, check out your books, make sure they review them. If there's anything else I can do in the meantime, just hit me up and I will help you as best I can, my friend.
Thank you very much for this interview. It's been a great chat.
Yeah. I look forward to our next one. Other than that, hope you have a good rest of your afternoon, evening, and I will talk to you soon, my friend.
All right. No worries. Thanks, mate.
See
You
you later.
too.
Thanks. See you later.